So what would you do if somebody comes to you, and I'm sure you get this all the time, and they have been stuck at a certain weight? They lost, 20 pounds, and they have another 20 to go, and they've been doing intermittent fasting. They've been doing a ketogenic type of diet. They've been doing, let's say, 18-6 schedule of fasting. What advice would you give this person who's just stuck at this certain weight?
So, of course, we always take a look at the diet too, making sure that there's no problem foods, that there's no snacking going on too. A lot of people we find on keto, they'll eat a lot of nuts and eat a lot of cheese outside of eating windows. So we try to go back to their eating days and say, okay, what do they look like? Are you eating from noon to 8 p.m.? Or are you eating lunch and are you eating dinner? And if you are eating in between, how can we add that fat and that protein to your other meals to make them more satiating so you don't have to snack between meals? And sometimes just that alone is enough to break a person through a plateau.
That's because if they're snacking in between their meals, they'll spike insulin and be in a fat storage state.
It's constant stimulus. So in order to develop insulin resistance, you need a constant stimulus and you need high levels of insulin. So a lot of people say, well, I'm not eating the carbs anymore, so I'm not secreting these high volumes of insulin. But regardless of what you're eating, you're still going to secrete some insulin. And if you're eating all day long, you're constantly spiking it. So the power of eliminating snacking is huge, because by career default, I end up working with a lot of dialysis patients. And dialysis patients have severe fluid restrictions. They've got all kinds of electrolyte issues at the kazoo. Like, we really, just to be careful, we don't want to be fasting them much more than 24 hours. So what do we do? And we have to be diligent with their eating windows. And it might take a little bit longer, but if we can get them eating and eating windows and not snacking between meals, they can get the same results as people who are regularly doing 36 or 42 hours of intermittent fasting, because they're keeping their eating windows really tidy. Most of the people that come to the fasting method for help, they're doing amazing ketogenic diets, like all real food, no fake food, no processed garbage. Like, a lot of them have come to the point where they've given up sweeteners. Like, they're eating beef and salmon and eggs and hard cheeses and broccoli. Like, they're eating real food, macadamia nuts and raw organic almond butter, but they're eating all day long. Or for that 8-hour eating window, they're eating for the whole 8 hours, and they already have some degree of insulin resistance. And insulin resistance itself will drive the insulin levels up. And then your eating habit of grazing for that 8 hours will provide the constant stimulus. So you are getting high levels of insulin still through that insulin resistance, even though you're not eating the bagel or the cereal or the pasta or the potatoes. So those eating windows are really important to limit the stimulus. That alone is huge. Like, I think if we just all stop snacking, like, we would immediately see this massive reduction in obesity and metabolic syndrome. And it's terrifying. 1 in 5 adolescents in the United States has prediabetes. And just cut out the snacks. Like, when my grandmother went to school, there was no snacking. When my dad went to school, there was no snacking. There was no obesity for these people until much later on in life. But you've got kids nowadays. Jason's talking about how his kids are essentially force-fed at breaks in between classes. And some of my colleagues, like Nadia Pataguana, her daughter's in school too. Like, as soon as they show up, they give them bread and juice in the morning. And this is after they've already had breakfast and before school starts. It's just wild what they're doing to children nowadays. So it's a really crazy thing. So getting rid of the snacks is critical. And then if someone is doing a 16-hour fast and they're feeling good, I would encourage them to try to increase it to 18 and then 24 hours. And then at the 24-hour mark, rip off the Band-Aid and try to do maybe 1 or 2 36-hour fasts a week for a period of time, maybe 2 or 3 months. see the results are, and then you can sort of predict how long from there it's going to take you to reach some of your target goals.
Yeah, what you shared about the 1 in 5 adolescents, it's ridiculous. It's got enough is enough, right? I mean, I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a trend in the right direction with the work that we're doing and the internet and the work that's available to so many people. So I think that it's a disgusting trend and stat, but I don't see it continuing in that direction. I see it going in the right direction within the next 5 to 10 years. I really do. Okay, fasting. What is your favorite benefit of fasting?
For me, I think it's the energy that I get while I'm fasting. I travel a lot for work. I am so privileged to go around and train doctors and other healthcare providers and speak at medical conferences. So regardless of how I try to do my best when it comes to eating on the road, even the other day or recently when I was traveling, I was actually in Florida and I ordered a lovely steak, but I watched some squeezed vegetable oil all over the grill. So I find that when I eat out, when I travel, it's tough. And I always come home and I feel inflamed and I feel really groggy. So I'll come home from a trip and I'll do like a fat fast for a couple of days. And then I'll jump into a fast. And I love how it just gives me that sort of energy reboot and that mental clarity that I need. And I start to feel human again. So for me personally, I really love the energy. When I was diabetic and obese, I sure love my lab test results and my weight loss. But for something that was really important for me back then was the mental clarity. If you read my report cards throughout school, Megan is the most attentive student. Megan always participates in class, so on and so forth, all throughout school. And then I got into university and I started to feel like I was handicapped or mentally impaired and I couldn't focus. I was the doodle queen on my notebooks. Professors used to get mad at me because I'd sit in the front and I was clearly not paying attention, but then I'd score really high on my tests. Like I once got over 100% on an exam that the entire class totally bombed. The class average was in the high 30s. And my professor was really irritated at it because she said, you sit front and center, you doodle, you pay no attention to me. And she's like, how did you do this? Like you did, like, I know you didn't even cheat off of anybody because no one in the class even got close to where you are. And she said, you have ADHD. And so I went through the whole rigmarole of getting diagnosed and then, getting put on an Adderall. And then finding that I needed Adderall to actually be able to focus like I could in high school and in elementary school. And I felt like I had become this like drug dependent person and I didn't like it. And then Adderall and then Vyvanse, I tried to switch to that because it had less side effects, but still it wasn't great. You're up all night. It mellowed out my personality. My friends didn't enjoy spending time with me. My boyfriend at the time thought I was being weird and didn't like me on it. But then I felt like I couldn't function in life. And I felt like I was on the fast track to dementia, which I probably was because of my diet. But I'll never forget, it was the end of the work year. I hadn't gone back to my psychiatrist to get my new dosage, or not new dosage, but new prescription of Vyvanse. And I realized I was in the clinic and I thought, gosh, like I haven't been on it for 3 months. And then I started to think about all of the work I've done in that 3 months, all of the literature reviews that I stayed up all night doing, all of the personal adult stuff, that I don't like doing. That's paperwork. I did it all and without any drugs. And that was the first time that I had been able to do that in about 5 or 6 years. And I think it was really just the mental clarity from fasting. And I had realized, I was looking at my calendar and I was like, I always wrote in fasting on my busiest days not just because it was easier to fast if you're busy, but because I'd be more mentally sharp and focused. And it took that whole realization that day for me to realize that I had been doing this habitually. You got a presentation, you need to fast that day so you'll be sharp and focused. And I hadn't put two and two together. I hadn't really connected it in my mind. It just become a habit to do that. So that's been really cool for me.
I love that. That's also my favorite benefit. And when I'm giving a lecture, I'm making sure I'm fasted because I'm just going to be on top of my game. And the physiological reason for that is the counter-regulatory hormones. Our body thinks, oh, there's no food in our environment. It's been 16 hours, 24 hours. Let's pump this body full of energy, right? Raise the sympathetic tone and raise these counter-regulatory hormones and give the human body all this energy, all this focus to go out there and hunt, right? And go kill our next meal, but we're going to use it to crush our day. And I think it's one of the best hacks you can have, especially if you're an entrepreneur or you're somebody who has a high demand or high workload and you want to function at a high level. Any human being could use that benefit, but especially if you're an entrepreneur. So I'm with you, Megan. I love that benefit.